Hey there Kipsters, Mr. Briatsky here, and we're looking at objectives 2C.1 through 5. That's the entire unit of 2C in one video. That's solving problems with proportions. This is AF 4.2, which again is a key standard. So to start, I want to quickly review how you actually solve any kind of proportion. And in order to solve a proportion, we're always going to basically taking two steps. The first step is to cross multiply, and the second step is to divide by the coefficient. So those are the same two steps that I'm going to be using to solve proportions here and in every single problem in this video. So step 1, I'm looking at this proportion left side, x divided by 3 equals 5 divided by 15. My first step is to cross multiply, so x times 15, I can really just write as 15x, equals 3 times 5, I can really just write that as 15. I finished step 1 by cross multiplying. Next, I need to divide by my coefficient. So if I divide by my coefficient, which is 15, I'm going to divide both sides by 15, so I'm using my equation skills to solve this equation, and x equals 15 divided by 15, that's 1. The answer should check out, and it makes sense because 1/3 is the same thing as 5/15. They're equivalent fractions. So I went through those two steps, and now I've solved that proportion. Please stop the video here. I'd like you to try solving B. Press play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, you tried it, so it's time to check. In order to solve this, your first step was to cross multiply. So you have 5 times x, that's 5x, equals 3 times 90. 3 times 90 is 270. So you should have had, as your first step, 5x equals 270. Step 1 is done. Step 2, divide by the coefficient. So we're going to divide by the coefficient of 5. Divide both sides by 5, and x equals 270 divided by 5, which equals 54. And so x equals 54. And if I take my answer and put it back in just to check, looks about right. 3/5 looks similar to about 54/90, so it's at least a gut check. It does work out, and the answer's right. I hope you got that same answer. Now we're going to talk about the different types of problems you're going to be able to solve using that skill of solving proportions. There are 4 different types of proportion problems that we talked about that you may see on the CST and that you're expected to learn leaving 7th grade. The first is a type 1 problem that has just one rate, and it's going to be pretty simple to write a proportion for it. So, first example. Superman flies 500 miles per hour for 2 hours. How far does he travel? So the information I see here is 500 miles per hour, so I know that means per 1 hour, for 2 hours. How far does he travel? So I need to write a proportion for this. Should be just one proportion, which has 500 miles over 1 hour, because he goes 500 miles per hour, is equal to x miles over 2 hours. We want to know how many miles he goes in 2 hours. So the first step is to write the proportion. I wrote 1, and I know that I'm solving for x. How many miles does he fly in 2 hours? To solve for this, I'll cross multiply. 2 times 500 equals 1 times x. This is really then 2 times 500 is 1,000 equals 1 times x. I've cross multiplied. Step 2 is to divide by the coefficient. I'll divide by 1 and divide by 1, which I didn't really need to do because when you do that, 1,000 divided by 1 is still 1,000. And so here's my answer. In 2 hours, he's going to go 1,000 miles. So this is a type 1 problem. I'd like you to try. Stop the video here. Please write a proportion for this problem that says the Flash can run 150 miles in 20 minutes At that rate, how long will it take him to run 300 miles? Press play after you've written your proportion and solved it to check your own answer. Okay, you've tried it, so now it's time to check. The Flash can run 150 miles in 20 minutes. That's one piece of information, which would be 150 miles in 20 minutes. That's the first part of proportion, equals 300 miles in X minutes. So your proportion should look something similar to that. That was the first step, was to write the proportion. I hope you had the proportion correct. Second is to actually solve it by cross-multiplying and dividing. 150x equals 20 times 300. 20 times 300. This really equals 6,000. And 150x. You then divide by the coefficient, divide by 150, divide by 150. And your solution should have been that x, oh, there's the extra space I need, equals 40. And so what that means is that for 300 miles, it takes him 40 minutes to complete those 300 miles. So this is 40 minutes. Hope you had that answer correct. That was a type 1 problem that we reviewed. Next is to look at a type 2 problem. These are problems that have one rate, but it's not asking how far he'll go in a certain number of hours. It's asking very specifically how far or how much happens in 1 unit. So it's asking for the unit rate. So for example, Superman flies 1,000 miles per 2 hours. So I have 1,000 miles per 2 hours. That'll be my first ratio. What is his unit rate? So it's asking how far will he go in 1 unit or 1 hour. So in order to solve this, again, I'll write one proportion, 1,000 miles over 2 hours equals x miles. We want to figure out how many miles he'll go in 1 hour. First step is to write the proportion. Second step is to now solve. I have 2x equals 1 times 1,000, that's just 1,000. Divide by 2, and I know that x equals 500. And so what that means is if he goes 1,000 miles in 2 hours, in 1 hour, he will go 500 miles. I'd like you to stop the video here and you try looking at this problem D. Superwoman flies 300 miles in 6 hours. What is her average speed per hour? And I'm going to give you a little hint and say it's asking for the average speed per 1 hour. Stop the video here, press play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, you've tried, so now it's time to check. Superwoman flies 300 miles in 6 hours. I'll do my work up here. That means 300 miles per 6 hours. And you want to know what is her average speed? So that means how far does she go per hour? So if she goes 300 miles in 6 hours, you want to know how many miles does she go in 1 hour. That's the proportion that you should have written. Next is to cross multiply and divide. 300 times 1 is just 300. And 6 times x, you have 6x. First step is to cross multiply. Then you divide by the coefficient. Divide by 6. Divide by 6. These cancel out and x would have equaled 50. And so what that means is that if she goes 300 miles in 6 hours, she's averaging 50 miles per hour. Not that fast for a superhero or superheroine.